So what is it that you actually want to be remembered as?
I guess the one that always took chances. I started my business because I was like, well, I can't find a job that I want to do. So I'll just start my own business and do my own job and create my own job. So I guess I just
Yeah.
want to be remembered as like taking chances, taking risks. A lot of the support that you give me, a lot of the support that my family gives me, I don't know if I would do it without you guys. So I think a lot of it is having that support system. And since I've been in politics, I have this whole circle of friends that I've never had before. That is so rewarding to have this circle of women that I never would have come across if I had not made that big shift. So
Mm,
you never know, like,
right.
what's over the bridge or what's over that obstacle that's holding you back. That's why it's like 60-40. Just go for it. Let's talk about creating a life and country we're proud of. Together, I'm your host, Alvina Vasquez. Welcome to Alvina Talks Shift. Well, here we are, another week, another episode, Alvina Talks Shift. I've been in it for a while, and I've featured a lot of people that I work with, a lot of people that are friends, and all these folks that have a really big impact on my life. And one of those who's central to my growth from adolescence to adulthood is Jamie. Many of you know him as, hey, he's my friend from high school. We've known each other for I don't know, it's not worth counting, but a really long time. And so he's with me today, but we're gonna switch it up. He is gonna ask me questions so that if you're interested in learning more about me, this is the episode to do it. Welcome, Jamie.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and congratulations on your. Is this the 100th episode? Is that what the special is?
Close to. Yeah, close to.
We're getting there. Okay. Well, it is a pleasure to be here, and yeah, I thought in listening to how Alvina is talking about shift, I was wondering about how does Alvina shift herself, and so I had some questions for you that I think will get people to wonder even more of why does this lady have a podcast? So let me ask you first, right out of the bat, what is something that you say, I had to do this podcast because
Okay, that's a good
that's a fill
question.
in the blank for you?
That's a Mad Lib. I feel like, first of all, the podcast space is not very diverse, very dominated by men. And, white people specifically. I didn't feel like there was
Like
enough
actors from
voices,
TV shows and
like actors. Yeah, really famous people. But I also felt like, there's a lot of cool stuff happening, a lot of cool people that I work with, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about that. I get to work on really amazing projects with really great people, and so I kinda wanted to people all ask me a lot, like, "What do I do?" Like, "How do you do what you do?" And a lot of that is, like, the interviews that I've featured and the ones I'm gonna do in the future is these really important issues that are happening. What does the, what is the personal experience of women, leaders, Latinas, political leaders that are constantly in a shifting mode because of code switching, because we're talking in different audiences? And I thought that was a really interesting topic to get into. And coupled that with my amazing life experiences and all the experiences of the folks around me. I thought that that would be the best place to put that is in a podcast. And because I've tried to blog before and it's incredibly boring. I would much rather be on camera talking about it.
well, and that's interesting because most people would say that they have the fear of, hearing themselves speak, and then also you're adding the video aspect of then they can actually see you. So, is there anything for people that don't know you that gave you that ability to say, "Oh, I could do this easily. I know how to do a podcast."
So when I was a kid, I loved local radio. I still to this day love local I listen to local radio more than often than I listen to like Spotify or these streaming services. I'm a huge local radio fan. And I at the age of 16, I started interning at a Spanish radio station, and I learned a lot. First of all, I had to relearn Spanish because Spanish, had left, our family because of the dynamics of speaking a second language at that time. So I relearned Spanish. I was able to learn how to use my voice, how to breathe, how to be comfortable in that. I did that for about 6 years, and then I went to work in TV, and then in TV, I got access to amazing mentors and leaders like Anne Trujillo, and I got inspired by the fact that she she has been there, and she's just retiring. She has been there for a really long time and representing a lot of faces that are never represented. And so I got more comfortable because I had this amazing boss. Her name was Natalie, and she was like, "We gotta put you on camera. You're perfect for it." So then I went through like video training and I had to speak in Spanish on camera, which was difficult because Spanish is not my first language. And so I had to overcome those fears, I had to get comfortable. And to be honest with you, I haven't listened to every single podcast yet that I've done because I do get nervous. And I haven't actually watched the
Hmm.
YouTube because I am nervous to watch it. I don't wanna be overcritical of myself is the thing, is like,
Oh,
none of this in the scale of things, none of this matters. What matters is what we're saying and the message we're getting across. So I guess I didn't wanna be hypercritical on myself on YouTube to change the dynamics of what I'm talking about and what I'm comfortable to say. So I actually haven't even seen the YouTube ones yet.
wow.
But, my parents love them, they watch it, so they haven't told me that I was wearing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing yet.
Well, so maybe would it help if you were in like a microphone costume?
Yeah.
Do you have any experience of doing that? Okay.
So I worked at a radio station. It was a Spanish talk radio station. And Spanish radio, they usually have mascots. They have big weekend events to drag people out. But a talk like that's usually for music stations. So this Spanish talk radio station was trying to pull people out. So we had, so we had a microphone, the microphone costume. It was so horrible. It's so ugly. Jamie wore it, my friend Freddie wore it, and he was wearing it on Federal, the main thoroughfare here, and he caused an
Yeah.
accident because somebody saw a microphone smoking. My mom wore it at the salsa club. My sister's ex-boyfriend, wore it at the hospital, but to, like, greet kids, and everybody thought it was a block of
Oh my
cheese.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
They thought the
That would
microphone was there's this little kid, this little cancer kid, and he's like, "Mom, look, a block of cheese." The funniest thing about it is with the microphone, so you're supposed to wear black sleeves so you don't see their arms, but
Yeah, yeah.
Richard would wear black sleeves. He had just his hairy arms sticking out of this triangular shaped mascot suit. It was terrible.
You've come a long ways.
Yeah, I've come a long ways. So have my friends and family who aren't forced to do things like wear a microphone costume and salsa dance at the Supreme Court nightclub.
Oh, and tell you, if we only had that costume still today,
Oh
and
my god,
it
I
would
wish.
be epic, epic. And so you're talking about these issues, and you know you've gone through this journey, and some of it's embarrassing, some of it's challenging, and you've definitely dealt with. I would say some people call them annoying, some people call them difficult, some people call them a words. How do you deal with the people that you don't quite see eye to eye?
That's a good question. Well,
Like the person that decided, you know what, you need to be in a microphone costume.
there was this one boss. Oh my god, he was intense. But I think, the older you get, the easier it is to deal with those people. I think it's really traumatizing when you're really young, when you're in my late teens, early 20s when I was at, this radio station. I had this general manager that really didn't want me there, and he made my life super difficult, and I think that was
Huh.
traumatizing. That I was, like, afraid of that person for the rest of my life.
What was some of the things?
Yeah, he would, like, write memos and well, at the time, there was no emails, so he would write memos and, like, slide them under my door about all the things that I failed at that week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was really mean.
That's
But,
that's a pretty aggressive, passive aggressive.
yeah, that's very passive aggressive. But you know what I did is I saved all of those memos and I flew to California and took them to his boss so
Yeah,
that they knew why I was leaving. So I feel like the younger you are, the more traumatizing that is
yeah.
because there's less people that there's less people that you know within an industry that have your back because you're so young. Like, people aren't gonna, like, champion for you when you just got there, right? Like, you have to build these long-term relationships.
Yeah.
But since I've been, since I have confidence in my work, I have confidence in the things that I do, when people act that way now, it's easier to brush off. I'm not saying it doesn't affect me, like, sometimes, like, I definitely will get a pit in my stomach. I don't luckily, I don't have anybody right now like that, but, I've experienced some really disappointing things. When I was at Channel 7, Azteca America, I had put together this national political, um, show, and it was the first time it had been done in Spanish that I knew of, and it was for the 2008 election. So this was a big election because, this was Obama's first, run at the office of
Mm,
president.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I was so excited because I brought these leaders from across the country to talk about the National Latina Agenda. It was this huge production that we put together. Um, the company that owned the TV station had, like, this awards thing, like, you could submit, your best programming to get an award. So I wrote up this report. I was told that they were gonna submit this program for an award,
Yeah.
and then the general manager at the time told me, "Oh, sorry, I didn't submit it. My knee-jerk reaction was not to submit it." That was the most like, I'm, like,
Wow.
tearing up just thinking about how heartbreaking that was. I had worked so hard and was so looking forward to that moment, and he just said it was a knee-jerk reaction, he didn't wanna do it. So, those hurtful moments, they stay with you for a long time,
Hmm.
and you just really hope that you don't do that to somebody else.
Yeah, and do you think he, knew the impact?
No, I don't think he cared, honestly. Obviously, he did not.
He was coming from a business aspect of, like, I don't
I
know if
mean,
this is gonna get the ratings for me or
I guess it was short-sighted. I think he didn't see it as a big of a deal as I did, to
okay.
have this big national conversation about what Latinos in the country needed.
Yeah.
It's always hard when you're what I found in broadcasting when they try to mix, like, Spanish and English stations together, there's always, like, one of them's left behind, and it's usually the Spanish media. Spanish media is not valued the way that it should be, and it never has been,
Mhm.
and it's gonna I don't know if it's ever gonna happen, but it just wasn't valued, all that hard work.
Sure. But then that's what is interesting then is, these leadership roles, but then it's interesting to then wonder what was your reaction? I mean, again, you go through a little bit of, sorrow and disappointment, and what, a couple days later, you decide what?
I actually left the building. I was like, "Alright, I gotta get out of here."
Mhm.
I went for a drive. I came back, I was like, "Whatever, gotta move on."
Yeah.
And then that's when I knew it was time for me to leave, actually. That's when,
Okay.
an opportunity came up for me to move into politics, and, before that happened, I might have not wanted to because I love broadcasting so much and I loved what I did so much that I would have stuck it out.
Yeah.
But considering that that happened and my value wasn't there, I was like it was kinda like the kickstart to get me out. So it taught me, like, you don't have to stay anywhere where you're not valued. And actually, my dad was super worried about me leaving because 'cause I'd been there for so long.
Yeah. You've been there how long?
I had been there for 10 years,
Yeah.
and he's from the generation where you, like, stick it out, you're with a company for 20, 25 years, and you retire. And so it was a new concept for my family for me to be like, "I just gotta go. Like, this isn't it for me anymore."
Right.
And so that's what kinda made me start to value what I did and, like, thinking, like, you don't have to stay anywhere that's not making you happy. And I know that when I went to a full career change, like, that I know that that surprised you, that surprised a lot of people in my life, like, "You're just gonna leave broadcasting? This is what you've been doing for 15 years of your life?"
Well, and it probably surprised yourself, but isn't that interesting that what you would say it was the disappointment that actually was the greatest motivator?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think at that age, like, mid-20 no, I was, like, 30.
Yeah.
You just learn to value yourself. You see yourself differently, right?
Right. And I think that's always an interesting challenge is that when we're talking, like again with your podcast, with about shifting, a lot of times it's we're we're mentally shifting. All right, am I seeing a different perspective? Am I able to see it, become a different person in their shoes? But also, it comes this physical shift, and that's sometimes the main piece here is recognizing, I think, that when we're hearing these words that we're hearing from even Alvina today, but all the other guests, it's always interesting to me to hear, oh, what is it that I have in common, right, with whoever's talking, but also what is it that this person I'm listening to is challenging me to think differently, and
Mhm.
that's ultimately, I think, what's a cool opportunity here with the podcast is to be able to say at the end of the episode, can you literally be able to listen as a listener and say, I've never heard that before,
Oh, that's interesting.
and that's where you know, oh, I might be onto something.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean,
Or in your case too, where you can say, "Oh, yep, I've gone through that disappointment before, and people might not have understood that about me, but now they maybe can also relate even better or have a better connection." Which then makes me wonder if you're looking at, let's say, I have this, I would call it a gut feeling that says, I know I'm not happy where I'm at. How would you say, well, you can make this shift without the disappointment?
I think you can. Yeah, without waiting for that shoe to drop, right? You kinda have to throw your, you have to throw your confidence into yourself. There was, like many of you know, my husband and I decided to seek the adoption route, and, we weren't waiting for a shoe to drop. We didn't think it'd be easy, but we thought it'd be one and done. That wasn't the case. We had a child with us for a few months, and then we, found out that it wasn't a legal adoption, so we had to, give the baby back. That was heartbreaking.
Mm,
We had him for 3 or 4 months, um, uh, and it's kinda like these external factors that created it. It wasn't anything we did wrong or anything we're expecting to happen. It was just these external factors that had affected the process for us. So, it wasn't like we were waiting for the other shoe to drop, but something super drastic, dramatic, and traumatizing happened to us in that process. So, we had to decide, like,
mhm.
are we ready to move on now? Do we wait, a couple months before we put our names back out there because you hope this doesn't happen again, but there's always a possibility it could. And honestly,
Yeah.
my husband was so mad. He's like, we're gonna just go for it this weekend." And I was like, "Well, give me a week before I start
Huh.
getting calls that, oh, you've been matched." So I think you have to give your time that time to think. You have to understand that whatever all the things that have happened to you in the past, that are affecting the trauma, like, it's triggering, right? Sometimes you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop because you've experienced something equally traumatizing, and so it brings that back up again, and so all of these things are connected, right? So I feel like you have to give yourself, the time and the space to think, through it, but if you're at 60%, "I can do this," and 40%, "I can't," I think you should just go with the 60 because it's never gonna be 100%. There's always gonna be, uh, some thought,
Right.
some feeling um, that this could go wrong, but I guess I've never been the person that kinda lives there. Like, I guess compared to my siblings,
Mhm.
I'm the one that kind of just
Mhm.
is on a whim. I'm the one that'll be like, "I'm gonna start a podcast. Who should I call?" So that's always been my personality to do that.
And I think that's a great, reminder is, like, for the listeners that's listening, their ability to recognize, well, what's your best emotion? What's your best, trait of yourself? And to be able to take that. And sometimes, it's also doing it with a sense of, I don't have to take myself so seriously. You had mentioned when you left Channel 7, um,
Yeah,
after
totally.
you kind of get over that disappointment, uh, if you can, I remember this very clearly, is you said, a year from now, they won't even remember who I was. And somebody has already replaced a week later. And as soon as they replace you,
It's actually like the
the
next
first thing
day.
they ask is, what was this lady doing? Why did she do it this way?
Exactly. I mean, that's right. Like any nobody everybody's replaceable. Never think that, and this is another thing about like life balance, right? Never think that people cannot get things done without you, and that you can't take time off or you can't take that extra, hour in the morning to get yourself together before you go in and have a really productive day because um you're everybody's replaceable. I am positive the minute I left, they went through my files and they threw everything away. Like, we'll just start fresh, right? Which is fine.
Yeah.
I'd been there for a long time, so it's fine that they did that. But I feel like we should never think, like you said, take ourselves so seriously that we can't leave the room and everybody's gonna be fine.
And then, so with that, then comes the hardest question: is like, well, uh, if we're replaceable as far as like career wise or job wise, then what is it that you and this might be a two-parter question, but so what is it that you actually want to be remembered as?
I guess the one that always took chances. Like I just always I started my business because I was like, well, I can't find a job that I want to do. So I'll just start my own business and do my own job and create my own job. So I guess I just
Yeah.
want to be remembered as like taking chances, um, taking risks, uh, and hope. And a lot of the support that you give me, a lot of the support that my family gives me, I don't know if I would do it without you guys. So I think a lot of it is having that support system. And since I've been in politics, I have this whole circle of friends that I've never had before. That is so rewarding to have this circle of women that I never would have come across if I had not made that big shift. So
Mm,
you never know, like,
right.
what's over the bridge or what's over that obstacle that's holding you back. That's why it's like 60-40. Just go for it.
Yeah, well, I think that's, in a sense, it sounds like a kind of a common answer in the sense of you're talking about, oh, I'm the risk taker, but through that is the support of those connections that you have developed all the way back in broadcasting to now. Um, and people always talk, about connections, but then I think that's the key is just to kind of restate what you said is, but when they think of Alvina, they want to say, but she was the risk taker. She was the one to be able to say, you know what, let's go for it. What do we got to lose? And that's a cool aspect is to sometimes hear that and be able to say, all right, if you're listening, what is it that you yourself want to be remembered as so that you can say, all right, I want to be known as this, polite person. I want to be known as this person that has supported with kindness. It's like find a character role in a sense, and then use that towards your trade. I remember your dad had mentioned this before about helping your sister with finding the job and finding the degree. And
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember how he described that.
I think I do, but you should say it.
Well, it was pretty simple in a sense of like first, in a sense, know who you are as a person, from what I remember, and basically saying, look, it doesn't really matter what job you choose as long as you, the person, bring yourself to that job. In other words,
Yeah, that's
if
true.
you're a charismatic person, then that can be a charismatic janitor, that can be a charismatic teacher, that can be a charismatic uh, broadcaster, political influencer. It can be anything. It's just as long as you kind of recognize, oh, this is who I am.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think he said it a lot simpler than that.
I mean, I think my sister struggled because, and this happens to a lot of folks, that you have a degree and you're expecting to go in one direction, but the opportunities that come your way are in a completely opposite direction. So then your career goes that direction.
Mm,
Since I had known what I wanted to do since I was in high school, I didn't have that. She didn't have that example of like, just go to school, get a degree, and then figure out what you're good at
right.
so that your days are easy, right? I was like, "This is what I wanna do, this is what I'm gonna do." And so we had a different path that way in our careers, and I think both things are valid. Sometimes when you're, 15, 16 years old, you're going to know exactly what you're going to do. Sometimes you're going to study something and end up in a totally different uh area of expertise, but that's only because that's what you're good at and that's where people are calling you to be.
Hmm.
Now she's like in a very high position, a Latina, leading in spaces that Latinas and women don't usually lead in. So think about that impact that she's having on other folks in that industry. So I feel like there are reasons, um, or there's not reasons. I hate to say things happen for a reason, but there's a purpose in either way, either path that you do.
Yeah, and again, that purpose is pretty easy when you know. Well, I mean, that's fine. You could put me in a. It's a. It's again probably a good nod to the parents that we had to be able to say, I don't know, I just grew up with the idea of put me in and I'll give it a try.
Yep, exactly.
And but part of that I think is going back to that piece of it's easier to do when you don't take yourself so seriously. Okay, when you don't
Yeah,
think about, oh my gosh, I'm on a podcast right now or anything, and you're just like, I don't know, maybe two people are going to watch this. then you
exactly. It's
then you can
okay
do
if
this
it's only my
really
mom and my
well.
dad.
Yes. Okay, then so what would be you mentioned some career wise and you had some adoption challenges, but then one of the hardest things that you had to overcome, what do you think then would fall under that category?
I mean, the adoption was definitely rough. I think my first divorce was a tough time. Um, but I feel it only because when you get married, there's so much put into that relationship from everybody around you. So
Hmm.
I was learning a lot about myself. I was changing a lot, and it was confusing in that I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I knew myself. Obviously, I didn't because this wasn't making me happy.
Hmm.
So I had to let my parents know, which was really hard. Actually, it was really hard to let my sister know. I told her boyfriend, who's her husband now at the time first.
And what was that? What was that fear?
Well, it's just the disappointment of like, because it is one of those things where like, all right, 60-40, I'm going for it. And then it didn't pan out. That's the chances that you take. It's not going to work. It's not going to
Okay.
work out. You're going to
Yeah.
put all this effort and it didn't work out. So, but in doing that, it's kind of at the same time that my career changed. So I started to learn how to take um ask for what I needed. I learned how to really like fight for myself and value who I was based on what I thought, not what others thought, which I think is a very hard thing to come across when you're a woman and when you're a Latina, because everybody's telling you who you are and what you do.
Hmm.
And so I think I had to take control of that in that space. And it kind of catapulted me into this whole other life that I never thought that I would have. I have an amazing husband now. I have a toddler, and um, I love my house. Like all of these things happened because I took that. Like I took the chance of that first marriage. Didn't pan out. Super embarrassing and disappointing. I mean, I'm sure others were not as disappointed as I was, but they were just disappointed that I was disappointed, right? It's like you're hurt because other people are hurting. Um, Same thing with the adoption. I feel like I was really upset about it, but I was really hurt because everybody had been supporting us through it, and so I knew it was gonna hurt everybody as much as it hurt us. So I think having that the here's the thing, when you open your community and you open your heart up to people that are experiencing what you're experiencing, just like you, they're at risk of getting hurt. So I felt like others had gotten hurt because that had happened to us. So I think what I've learned is the more people that for me, not everybody's like this. And I went through a lot of miscarriages. Every time I got pregnant, everybody knew. I told everybody. I couldn't hold that much pressure by myself. So everybody always knew every time I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And everybody knew when it didn't come through. So I feel like my tactic is just like let as many people know so that when the blow comes, the ripple kind of fades out. It's not as harsh than if I had to
Sure.
carry it all by myself.
And well, I think something else that you've done that people can kind of receive this guidance from is that, okay, these challenges come, or these even failures and hard bumps in the road, but it's also sometimes even instructing people, hey, this is how you can help. Right, because that's always the hard part, is if you're on the receiving end of hearing bad news of your friend or a colleague or anybody, um, it's that instinct of like, okay, well, how can I help? But when the person is able to say, this is how you can help, then it just, I don't know, it adds that comfortability to saying, I'm just glad that you're again here with me and that I can tell it to somebody. And really, that's most of the time, like you said, is it's mostly just, I just need somebody not to even physically sit with me. I just need them to know
Yeah, exactly.
that this is going on.
Like, you and I were never like that, uh, in our teens and 20s. We weren't super open and, like, sharing and caring and talking about what good friends we are and how much we love each other until we started going through these traumas together. Did we actually start, like, being comfortable with those feelings? So I think that's another thing that happens as you age is you start to say, I have to share just as much as I share my pain, I have to share my love. I can't just, like, keep it up
Sure.
by myself because if that love isn't out there, what happens to the relationships?
So then, like you mentioned, now you're in this place that has led you to kind of this gratitude. So, what would you say is one of the proudest moments in your career?
Honestly, having my own business for 5 years and being so successful at my business, I think, has been amazing. I never thought that I would have all of these clients. I got to work on the Biden campaign, I got to work on the Jared Polis campaign, so
What did you think your first year? Where were you shooting for your first year?
my first year, I was like, "If I get one client that pays me, like, 5,000 a month, I'm good. That's all I need." But that's not enough, honestly. That's not enough in today's economy. But luckily, because of the relationships and this goes back to, it kinda circles back to this podcast. Because of relationships, because, I build trust, because I am respectful, because I like to listen to people's ideas, I'm a team player. Every time I get a client, I'm a team player. I'm like ready to jump in and do everything that I can because I built those strong relationships and people trust me. And honestly, sometimes people pick you from another consultant just because they like being around you.
Hmm.
So it's just being nice, being kind. Really is what has had me be so successful.
Yeah. Well, then here's my last two. All right. So you're going to fill in the blank with these, and this is a nod to Oprah, but um, I want you to fill in this sentence here, and then explain why. I believe the world needs.
I think the world needs less of being afraid of things. I think we need less things that make us afraid of each other, make us less afraid of creating all emotions are based in fear. And so what can we take away from the world that takes away fear? So that we're not so that conflict doesn't turn violent, so that um people don't feel racist or violent acts against others. Like, what can we do to take that fear away?
Hmm. So my next is then, if I would change one thing, I would.
That's tough. I don't know if I know enough about the world to know what I would change. That shows me I'm a good consultant. Okay, what would I change in the world? Um, I don't know. What would you change?
it's similar. I think it would be patience.
Yeah,
I think patience is a very involved skill.
yeah,
But I think if we were able to somehow measure it and say, all right, I just gave everybody 20% more patience like that, then I think you do possibly tap back to what you said is now I'm not afraid so much because I can just sit for a second. I can just sit for 3 seconds. There's this amazing joke. I can't remember where I heard it from, but some video, and it was a grandma on the airplane, and she pulled a putty. For those that have watched Seinfeld,
Yeah.
she pulled it for 9 hours. This was a 9-hour flight, and she just did this
That's awkward.
for the whole time. Just sat there. But really, and I remember this also is asking uh, a student, a college kid, and he went on a run before class started. And I said, "Oh wow, that's great. How long did you go?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm training for the marathon, so I had to put in 15 miles." And I went, "Holy cow, this morning?" He's like, "Yeah, I started at 7 a.m." So I was impressed. But then I just was curious, and I said, "What'd you listen to? Like, what kind of music are you listening to, or when you're running?" He goes, "Nothing." That's what blew me away. You're with your thoughts for 15 miles? Just yourself? That's what I said. That's
I cannot be with my thoughts that long.
yeah, it's it's quite a feat, I think, but I think that would benefit. It would benefit a lot of us to just be able to say, all right, I can just sit here for 9 hours without TikTok, without something in my hand.
With me, it's always like, who am I gonna call?
Sure, right, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always on the phone.
All right, anything then that comes to mind as far as your thoughts of world?
Oh,
People
okay,
leave it
so I have
like
to
that.
answer the question before we go. I guess in that vein, I would say, empathy. I feel that there's so much, and it's kind of this it's funny because 'cause I'm on TikTok a lot, but I feel like there's a good and bad in all of these super direct, social media and, channels and streaming and stuff. And I think in some cases, it does create more empathy because we're seeing more stories of families that are struggling to make ends meet. We're seeing the real life impacts
Mm,
of kids that are dealing with asthma or cancer or these illnesses that are caused by our environment. And so I feel like even though there's a risk in using these tools, these visual tools like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, I also think we can learn a lot from them. We can learn empathy, um, and so I would say in that vein, empathy.
so good. All right. Thank you, Alvina. Congratulations on your podcast, your success, your family, everything that you have. It's awesome. And I think people are really going to just love the inspiration that you're continuing to bring everybody. So go out there, take a risk,
Okay.
but be empathetic at the same time. Love it.
Exactly. Don't be mad if we fail. Thank you for watching Alvina Talks Shift. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, engage, empower, evolve. If you liked this episode, or if you want more content like this, go to alvinatalkshift.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.